Good morning. It's okay. I'm Hang Lei To, the chair of the Professional Fiduciary Bureau Advisory Committee. I'm calling to this meeting to order at 10:14 a.m. This meeting is being held on Wednesday, June 20th, 2018, at the Department of Consumer Affairs located at 1747 North Market Boulevard, Sacramento, California 95834, and has two teleconference locations at the Elder Well, located at 6345 Balboa Boulevard, Building 1, number 114, Encino, California 91316, and Jordan Goldstein Fiduciary Services located at 5 3rd Street, Suite 1132 in San Francisco, California 94103. All meeting locations are open to the public and accessible according to the American Disability Act standards. By the way, I want to amend the date. It's going to be Wednesday, August 15, 2018. So now we are at item number 2. At this time, I would like to ask Angela to call roll to establish a quorum.
Good morning. I'd like to call the roll. Hang Lee To,
Present?
Kathleen Thompson,
Present.
Donna Kell,
Present.
Jenny Chacon is absent, Barbara DeVries,
Present.
Eileen Federizo,
Present.
King G.
Present.
With 6 members present, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Angela. Item number 3, I would like to ask the committee members and bureau staff to introduce themselves. I'm Hang Lei To, the San Francisco Labor Council.
Kathleen Thompson, Supervising Probate Court Investigator for Solano County.
King G, public member.
Donna Kell, Professional Fiduciary, Sacramento County.
Rebecca May, Bureau Chief.
Fred Chan, UDCA Legal Affairs.
Angela Quadra, Professional Fiduciaries Bureau.
Barbara DeVries, professional fiduciary in the Bay Area.
Eileen Federizo, geriatric social worker, licensed professional fiduciary serving the Los Angeles area.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to introduce themselves?
My name is James Counts. I'm a CPA and TFA out of Hemet, California.
Thank you. So item number 4. Rebecca, please read the Bureau's news mission statement.
The Bureau's mission statement is as follows: to protect consumers through licensing, education, and enforcement of the Professional Fiduciaries Act by promoting and upholding competency and ethical standards across the profession.
Any comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Rebecca. Item number 5. Are there any suggested edits from the committee members about the meeting minutes from June 20th, 2018? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to
I move
approve?
to approve the minutes. This is Eileen Federico.
Is there a second to the motion?
Hold on, hang on, I want to clarify. It's a motion to approve the minutes as written,
Correct.
Thank you.
and the first was from,
Eileen.
okay.
Is there a motion to the second? Is there a second to the motion?
Kathleen Thompson, I make a second.
Thank you. Any discussion from the committee members? Any public comment? So Angela, please do a vote by roll call.
A yes vote to this will be to approve the minutes as they are written. Barbara DeVries, Barbara?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you vote to approve the minutes as they are written?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I do.
Thank you. Eileen Federico?
Yes.
Jenny Chacon is absent. King G?
Yes.
Donna Kell?
Yes.
Kathleen Thompson?
Yes.
Hang Lee?
Yes.
With a vote of 6 yeses, the minutes will be approved as written and posted to the website.
Thank you. Item number 6, I would like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs Executive Staff to present the update.
Good morning. There you go. Good morning, Chairwoman Toe, Vice Chair Thompson, Chief May, Advisory Committee members. Karen
Hi,
Nelson.
This is Eileen Federico. Will you please speak into the microphone?
Absolutely. How's this?
Thank you.
Is that better? Okay, perfect. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you all again today. Karen Nelson, Assistant Deputy Director with DCA, Board and Bureau Services. And thanks for allowing us an opportunity to provide a brief update with regard to department activities since I was here with you all in June. So a couple of updates with the directors meeting. There were 2 since we were all with you. First, on June 25th, the director had his first board member and advisory committee leadership teleconference. We had over 30 participants in that call, which included board presidents, vice presidents, chairs, vice chairs, as well as representatives from our advisory committees. During that call, DCA provided updates on the pro rata Assembly Bill 2138 and some regulatory process improvements. And with the initial success of this teleconference, we plan to host another one before the end of the year, and we do hope you're able to participate at the next one. We will make sure to send the Bureau the date for that as soon as we have that available. Last week, on August 6th, the directors' quarterly meeting, we had some presentations with the Department of General Services, DCA's Equal Employment Opportunity Office, as well as DCA's Office of Human Resources. DGS previewed their plan for new construction that will house DCA in 2024. The Equal Employment Opportunity Office provided a primer on implicit bias, and the Office of Human Resources shared some new improvements on HR processes specific to recruitment as well as adverse actions. The next director's quarterly meeting is scheduled for October 29th. Next update relates to our licensing and enforcement work groups. As I mentioned before, we've been having these work groups to continue to discuss specific ideas to innovate in the areas of licensing and enforcement and identify ways in which our programs can identify efficiencies or ways in which to collaborate with each other in areas of licensing and enforcement. This month, the licensing work group discussed a tool for streamlining letter generation, the Quality Business Intelligence Reporting Tool, also known as QBERT. This tool is currently available to Breeze programs and will soon be available to all programs in DCA. We'd like to thank the Bureau for continuing to send their staff to these meetings and contributing to the dialogue. And I believe in chatting with Angie, you've brought some of the things from that work group into the Bureau, so we're happy to hear that feedback. And last but not least, wanted to provide an update on the DCA Future Leadership Development Program. We are kicking off the second cohort in September. We did receive 48 applications in this go-round, and we want to acknowledge Chief May for her participation in the steering committee this year. Thank you for your support. And that concludes the update for today. And as always, if the department can be of service to you and the Bureau, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 7. Rebecca, please present the Bureau updates.
Thank you. So if you want to follow along in the materials, I'll present our licensing and enforcement statistics first. We did a comparison between the end of fiscal year 16-17 and 17-18. Again, it's just a snapshot in time. For licensing, new licensees, our number went down a little bit. But I'm heartened by, if you look at the last column, that our applications received went up. So I hope that that is really the number to follow. I'd like to thank Ms. Akel, who suggested adding that piece of data to our reports, the advisory committee meetings. We have our active licensees has gone up a little bit, along with our total licensees. Any questions? All right, moving along to enforcement, it's the same timeline snapshot the end of fiscal year 16-17 compared to 17-18, and as you can tell, we've been busy. We've issued more citations this year, received more complaints, but I'm pleased to show that the average days to close complaints has narrowed quite significantly, so that's good news. Any questions?
Rebecca, this is King G. The question I have is there any chance you could give us just a summary update of the areas of the majority of the complaints?
Usually the complaints revolve around the care of service. We get, usually it's family that's displeased with the actions of the fiduciary. Most of our complaints do not end up being actionable items. We don't take discipline on our licensees. So we do get, it really runs the gamut.
Kathleen Thompson, along those same lines, the 4 cases that were AG cases initiated, what is the nature of those? Or 5 cases, I'm sorry.
Usually, so that would go beyond just a general citation. Either sometimes the licensee didn't respond to the citation, and then so we contract with the AG's office to file an accusation, and that's more serious at that point. That usually leads to probation and sometimes revocation.
Is that a first proto?
Pardon? Who was that?
Okay, moving along to outreach. Well, since our last advisory meeting was only 2 months ago, we haven't gone to any events since then. We do have a couple of upcoming events, one in Bakersfield at the Kern County Bar Association Estate Planning and Probate meeting, and Angie's going to be attending that one. That's in October. And then the 2018 Yolo County Senior Resource and Crime Prevention Fair in Woodland. The tentative date on that is October 26th. And as always, if you hear of anything that you think we should attend, please forward it to me. Any questions? Okay, moving along to our strategic plan. Oh, I skipped something. I apologize. Our newsletter. So our newsletter is almost ready, I promise. It's been drafted. It's been given the okay by our legal department, and it's now with the department's publications unit for formatting and general beautification. They'll be sending me a proof in the next week or two, so I guarantee this thing's going to be out before our next meeting in November. Any questions? Okay, and now on to our strategic plan. So Bureau staff have been working towards some of the objectives we've established in our strategic plan. I know you've all seen the plan, so I'll run fairly quickly through the 6 goals and what we have accomplished under each so far. So the first goal is licensure. We are increasing pathways to licensure by allowing experience-only candidates to apply for licensure. We anticipate this statutory change will be authorized by the legislature in the coming days or weeks as part of our Sunset Bill AB 3144. We are also forming a subcommittee to address apprenticeship later in today's meeting. We are updating our licensing brochures. We've conducted an occupational analysis of the profession, and we are collaborating with the department's IT unit to determine the feasibility of moving to an online application and renewal database. So our second goal relates to enforcement. We are updating the Bureau's complaint process webpage to make the process more transparent. And we are disseminating information about common violations as a strategy to reduce enforcement actions in our newsletter and on our website. And we are recruiting subject matter experts via our newsletter for help reviewing enforcement cases. The third goal is communications and outreach. So the newsletter, it's almost ready for publication, and I'm really committed to getting another one shortly after the start of the new year. We've collaborated with the department's Office of Public Affairs to establish a communications plan and are currently working to implement it. And we're in the process of updating all of our informational materials. Professional education is our fourth goal, and I've got nothing to report, honestly, on this goal. But we anticipate legislation will change some of our CE requirements, and I'd like to form a subcommittee next year to do a wholesale review of that. The fifth goal is regulation and legislation. We have 2 proposed regulations in the pre-review process with the department, and we have an additional 2 proposed draft regulations to discuss today later in the meeting. We've also identified several other regulatory changes needed, and we'll pursue those in the coming months. And we are also preparing proposed legislation for 2019 to submit to the department for their review by next month. And finally, our last goal deals with administration. We've established a training program with the department's Consumer Information Center so they can effectively respond to inquiries on behalf of the Bureau. So in closing, I'm pleased with the amount that we've done so far, but I recognize there is a ton more on the list to do. I'm grateful that this is a 4-year plan, so we've got some time. Does anybody have any questions? Suggestions?
Hello,
Yes.
this is Barbara DeVries. Under professional education, some years back, we had an education committee. And
I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit louder?
yes,
Thank you.
let me get. Hello, can you hear now?
Yes.
Years ago, we had an education committee, and we came up with a whole plan of what we thought we needed for initial and continuing education. If I could find it, or maybe Angela could find it, we tabled it after we got, recommendations. But they said we'd need all kinds of legislative changes, and it was a big project. Anyway, if we could somehow find that, resurrect that, I think the work has been done.
That would be great. I think when we reform the subcommittee, we can certainly look at what the original education committee came up with and build off of that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, we did a lot of work. We had, community input, et cetera. So, yeah, it may have been done already.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any comment from other committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Rebecca. Item number 8. I would like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office to present the budget update.
Good morning. I'm Matt Nishamini with the DCA Budget Office, and I'm substituting again for your regular budget analyst who couldn't be here today, but I'm happy to be here, and I was here at your last meeting in June.
Hi, this is Eileen. Will you please speak up into the microphone?
Yes, I certainly will.
Thank you.
So I really have nothing additional to report from my last, when I was last here in June. The two documents that we've provided, the first one is a projection document. It's basically in line with where the previous analysis was, and it's been consistent with what we've been tracking all year. So we have no concerns with the projection document. We've also provided a fund condition statement, and this fund condition statement has been updated with the, for 17-18, based on our estimate of revenues and expenditures. I would note that this one has 5 years. Typically, a fund condition statement displays 3 years. This one, Ms. Dragoo has provided, the fund condition that she provided goes up.
Barbara DeVries. I'm sorry, please speak into the mic. We really can't
Yes,
hear
yes, I will. Sorry. So this fund condition statement displays 5 years, and they're typically 3 years. I would note that in budget year 18-19, this fund condition statement depicts a structural imbalance, to use the parlance of our time, whereby revenues are less than expenditures. Now, we have no concerns at this time because the imbalance is very minimal, but it's just something to consider as you weigh costs or things that you might want to do, programs that you might want to implement would exacerbate the structural imbalance moving forward.
This is King G. What's the, can you just go over briefly what the reason for the imbalance?
In this fund condition statement, we're showing revenues as flat. From BY and onward, we're showing revenues flat. But they are greater than what was received in the past year. So it's a conservative estimate, but we're flat. On the expenditure side, we do show a 2% growth, and that accounts for employee compensation, retirement, basic employee compensation benefits that are adjusted with the governor's budget each year. And so that's really what's driving it.
And that's over a period of 5 years?
The fund is fine now. It has plenty of reserve.
Right.
But at some point, it will become insolvent.
And what happens at that point?
Well, we wouldn't let that happen. We would advise the Bureau and the Advisory Committee to take an action several years before that. And we will continue working with the Bureau to monitor this situation. There are two options that the Bureau has. You can either cut spending or you can increase fees. And I know that there's some sensitivity. You have an annual fee, and it's maybe a barrier for some folks. So the other option would be to cut programs, cut staff. Those are your two options. If you do raise fees and you need a statutory change, that's a 2-year process, so we'd want to back up from that. Mm-hmm. Plus, you would probably have to implement regulations, so that's another year or so. So it's something that you want to plan at least 2 or 3 years ahead.
Thank you.
Any comments from other committee members?
Kathleen Thompson, on the budget report, let's see, it's under 1718. It says Attorney General. It goes from 20,000 to 66,000 back to 24,000. What's the reason for that jump?
So the 66,000 is the budget allocation for the Bureau, the 66,000. Year-to-date, they've spent 24,093.
Okay.
And then that's based on 11 months, and so if we straight-lined it, then you get to the 26,000.
Okay,
It's just an annualized number.
okay, thank you.
On that same question, then, for the current budget year, since we didn't expend all the funds in that line item, is it still in the new year, is it 66,000 again for the AG?
So it is still 66,000, yes, sir. So while I'm sure that because you're fiduciaries, you would like to have everything in a nice silo, but for state budgeting purposes, we're more concerned with the bottom line, and that she stays within her bottom line. So she's, maybe using those resources elsewhere at this point, which is okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tracy Montez, just a quick question, clarification. So we're allocated the 66,000. If we don't use it, we can redirect it because, as you said, it covers the bottom line. But if we do have an overage, or I should say, if we haven't spent all of our funds, it does revert back to the fund, correct, at the end of the year. So that's why those projected months in reserve is going to fluctuate depending upon what we save, if we are able to do so. So I just wanted to, again, kind of reassure the members that Rebecca works very closely with the budget office. We really appreciate it. And when possible, our division does try to assist the Bureau to save costs and so forth. So again, that could change. Hopefully it'll go up rather than down.
Thank you, Tracy, for the clarification.
No, that's exactly right. So to the extent there's any savings, then it rolls back into the fund, into your fund balance. This fund condition statement shows you fully expended because it's in the out years, so we're just displaying as fully expended. But in the event that she does save money, then it would flow back into your reserve balance, yes.
Thank you. Thank you again. Okay. So we are at item number 9. I would like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Review Office to present their legislative update.
All right, folks, good morning. My name is Alex Millington. I am a legislative analyst with the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm going to try and get right up in this microphone. I am a mumbler, so if I start doing that, please let me know. Before I get started, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to come down here and give everybody an update on what's going on with legislation affecting the Bureau and the Department. Given the timing of this meeting, we are
Hi
in...
there. I feel like a broken record, so I apologize. Will you please speak up into the mic?
I'm going to get right up in this microphone. How's that? I'm going to assume that that's working better. At this precise moment, the legislature is in the final weeks of its calendar. And, okay, get right up in this microphone. So, I'll start off by reading some important legislative dates for the remaining weeks of this calendar. This agenda was completed last week, so some of these dates may have already passed. August 6th is the date that the legislature reconvenes from its summer recess. That's already happened. August 17th is the last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills. So if they haven't done so, it has to be reported onto the floor of the second house by that date. August 24th is the last day for bills to be amended on the floor. August 31st is the last day for the legislature to pass bills. A recess begins upon their adjournment. And September 30th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills
I'm sorry, this is Barbara DeVries. We don't hear a thing.
I'm not sure if that's a technical issue on our end.
Barbara, can you hear me on my microphone?
Yes.
Do you want to try one of these?
Should I come up there? Okay. All right, can you hear me on this microphone?
Yes.
Okay. So real quickly, I'll describe the remaining deadlines for the end of this legislative session. We'll just go through them real quick. August 6th is the last day for the legislature, is the day the legislature reconvenes from its summer recess. That's already happened. August 17th is the last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills to the floor. August 24th is the last day for bills to be amended on the floor. August 31st is the last day for the legislature to pass bills to the governor. They will begin a recess upon their adjournment on that date. And September 30th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills that have been presented to him. Now, we'll move on to the next point, which is legislation related to the Bureau. As a general matter, I would think there are 3 bills in my remaining presentation that we might want to pay close attention to, or closer attention to, and those are AB 1247, AB 3144, and AB 2138. The remainder of the bills are in the same form as they were the previous time I came to give an update to the Bureau, although I will go through each of them here and let you know what their status is as of today, so I can give you the most up-to-date information on each bill. So first, we can talk about AB 1247. That relates to pre-licensing education for licensees of the Bureau. Here, in the description in the agenda, or in the handout, this bill would require applicants for professional fiduciary licensure to complete pre-licensing education, including instructions in understanding and applying cultural and ethnic data to the process of care that includes information on the appropriate treatment of and provision of care to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex communities. This bill was actually amended on August 9th. So in substance, the August 9th amendments also include a continuing education requirement. So in addition to pre-licensing education, there would be a continuing education requirement. That requirement would be completed once every 5 years. That's the language that's in the bill currently. And for both pre-licensing education and continuing education, the coursework would have to be at least 1 hour. So they've put a time, they've quantified the amount of time that would be necessary to satisfy the requirement. So for both pre-licensing and continuing education requirements, there would be at least 1 hour of LGBT-related coursework required. And currently, this bill is on the Senate floor, so it is awaiting a vote in the second house. Are there any questions about AB 1247? Okay. I don't know if we want to seek public comment or just have me move on to the next items.
I think we should move on.
Move on?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. The next one is AB 2113. This bill would establish that a guardianship of the estate terminates upon the death of a ward unless otherwise provided by law. I do know that there was a question about 2113. I'll address that in a later item further down on the handout. That bill was chaptered on July 9th, so it's awaiting a decision by the governor. I'm sorry, that's not correct. It was chaptered on July 9th, so it was passed into law. AB 2236 establishes that a conservatorship would terminate upon the death of a ward unless otherwise provided by law. I do know last time, I think I left that language the same. I do know last time it was pointed out to me that a conservatorship is not over a ward. There's a different term there, so I apologize for leaving that. That bill was also chaptered on July 18th. AB 2426 would establish or extend a trustee's authority to unilaterally terminate a trust from trusts not exceeding $40,000 to trusts not exceeding $50,000 in total value. That bill was also chaptered on July 9th. AB 2750 relates to certified copies of death records. It authorizes conservators of the estate or person the right to obtain certified death records from state or local registrars and county recorders. Currently, conservators of the estate or persons may request a certified copy of a death certificate through a funeral establishment, but not directly with the state or local registrar or county recorder. This bill was also chaptered. This bill was chaptered on July 18th. I know there was a follow-up question about 2750 as well, and that's also further on down in the handout. Next, there's AB 3144. That is the Bureau's sunset bill. As discussed last time, this bill would extend the sunset date of the Bureau from January 1 of, 2019 to January 1 of 2023. This bill was amended on June 19th to include an expansion of the scope of practice to include representatives of decedent estates. Also includes an experience-only pathway to licensure and a general prohibition for billing clients for responding to complaints filed against the licensee with the Bureau. It says here that the bill was referred to the Appropriations Committee for hearing on the 6th. It is still set for hearing in the Appropriations Committee on the 16th. It's on what's called the suspense calendar. So a number of these bills I'll let you know are scheduled for hearing on the 16th, which is tomorrow. And if they pass out of the committee on that date, they will be referred to the floor for further votes. Next is SB 909, the Uniform Trust Decanting Act. This bill would allow a fiduciary of an irrevocable trust to distribute the property of a first trust to one or more second trusts, or to modify the first trust without the consent of the beneficiaries or direct approval of the court, subject to certain exceptions. I'll refrain from reading the full description here. This bill remains in the same format that it was the last time I gave an update to the Bureau. It has moved out of the Appropriations Committee in the Assembly and is now on the floor, so it's awaiting further vote in the second House. And then there is SB 931 relating to custody status and conservatorships. This bill would expand the authority of a person or their designee in charge of providing mental health treatment at a county jail, allowing that person or designee to recommend a conservatorship for an individual determined to be gravely disabled. This bill would also prohibit conservatorship investigators from failing to schedule an investigation based on the custody status of the individual subject to that investigation. This bill is also in the same form as it was at the previous update, but it has moved out of the Appropriations Committee, is on the Assembly floor, and is pending a vote in the Assembly. Before I move on, are there any general questions about pieces of legislation related to the Bureau?
Hi, this is Jordan in San Francisco. Can you hear me?
Yes. We could hear you.
My question is about AB 2750.
Yes.
Given that the conservatorship terminates on the death of the ward or the conservatee, and the need for death certificates is going to be obviously subsequent to that, could you make sure that the language permits the person who was the conservator at the time of death to get death certificates? Because you obviously will no longer be the conservator since it terminated.
So, first off, the bill has already been chaptered, so it has been passed into law, but the bill, so legally, I agree that what you're saying is the case, that the relationship terminates, but this bill establishes that specifically for the purposes of obtaining certified copies of death records, that a list of individuals are given sort of a carve-out in the law entitling them to make those requests. So this is just related to obtaining death records. It does not affect the legal authority of a decedent's conservator to make final arrangements, and it does not change conservatorship law in general. It's just about obtaining the death records.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll move on to legislation related to the Department of Consumer Affairs. First up here is AB 2138. Now, this bill is related to denial of applications for all boards and bureaus under the Department of Consumer Affairs based on criminal convictions. This bill, excuse me, would authorize a board to, among other things, deny, revoke, or suspend a license on the grounds that the applicant or licensee has been convicted of a crime only if the applicant or licensee is presently incarcerated or if the conviction occurred within the previous 7 years, excluding serious felonies, and would require crimes to be substantially related to the qualifications, functions, or duties of the business or profession. This bill was amended on June 20th to extend what was previously a 5-year period of application to a 7-year period to exempt serious felonies rather than violent felonies from the 7-year period. So previously, the bill had indicated that that violent felonies were exempt from that 7-year limitation. That phrasing was changed to serious felonies. It also changes what was previously described as an adverse and directly related standard to a substantially related standard. So those crimes that can be used in the decision-making process of the Bureau would be those substantially related to the duties or the business of the profession. The amendments also eliminated a provision that specified that changes made by the bill superseded directly contradictory provisions in the practice acts of the boards and bureaus and other existing law. It removed a 90-day response to petition requirement and eliminated a prohibition on the boards from taking disciplinary action if a licensee completed a diversion program. It removed a 2-year probation limitation and eliminated a provision of existing law that allows a board, following a hearing requested by an applicant pursuant to Subdivision B of Business and Professions Code Section 485, to grant a license effective on the completion of licensure requirements, to grant a license immediately and issue a public reproval, to immediately revoke a license, stay a revocation, and impose probationary terms on the license. And this bill is currently on the suspense calendar to be heard tomorrow, August 16th, and like the other bills, if it moves out of suspense, would go onto the floor for further vote.
Kathleen Thompson, who or how is it determined when it says the crime has to be substantially related to the qualifications, functions, duties? How is that determined? Who is that determined by?
I believe that determination is made by the Bureau, but there may be some further review upon if an applicant is denied licensure based on substantially related prior felony convictions. I believe that they would still have access to the standard appeal process and could call into question whether they are substantially related through that appeal process.
So is there a list per se that if it's if they've been convicted of theft or fraud, that meets the criteria? Is there a list of crimes, or is it just determined case by case?
It would be determined case by case. We don't have a
No.
hard list.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to SB 984. This bill relates to representation of women on state boards and commissions. This bill would require all appointed state boards and commissions to be comprised of a specific number of women based on the total number of board or commission members, and would require the Office of the Governor to collect and release aggregated demographic data provided by state board and commission applicants, nominees, and appointees. This bill has also passed out of, well, I want to choose my phrasing correctly here. It is on suspense in the Appropriations Committee, so it's also one of those bills that will be heard tomorrow, the 16th, and if it passes out of the suspense file, will be moved on to the floor for further vote. And lastly, here we have SB 1137, relating to veterans and professional licensing benefits. This bill would require the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Consumer Affairs to consult with each other to take appropriate steps to increase awareness and notification for veterans and their spouses regarding professional licensing benefits. This bill has moved out of the Appropriations Committee and is now on the Assembly floor for that vote. Before I move on, are there any further questions about bills related to the Department of Consumer Affairs?
Sorry. Kathleen Thompson, on that last bill, how is that communication done? Is it each board's responsibility or bureau to communicate with the Veterans Affairs, or is it done at a higher level?
I don't know the specific answer to that question, but I believe that because the responsibility for the consultation falls to the department, it would be the department's determination to seek at a future date how it would, what it's going to do to consult. So it would leave to the department the specifics of gathering its own information for
consultation with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
All right, thank you.
All right, now next I'll move on to other bills. These are bills that are no longer related to the department, two-year bills or dead bills. I'll try to move through these more quickly. AB 767 was amended into a non-department bill on July 2nd and now relates to the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. As of August 6th, this bill was referred to the Appropriations Committee. AB 827 would require the department to create an entity to provide high-skill immigrants with information relating to the application process for department programs. This is a two-year bill. No further action has yet been taken on this bill, so it's not per se dead, but at this point in the legislative process, it would appear unlikely that further action would be taken, although in an abundance of caution, it still remains a two-year bill. The same it can be said of AB 1380. I know this bill has been discussed at several previous meetings. This bill relates to developmental services and regional care services. Would require regional care centers to develop a process by which vendor contracts are reviewed, and would require employers to submit fingerprints of prospective in-home respite workers to the Department of Justice for background checks. Similarly, this bill is in the Senate Appropriations Committee, referred to the suspense file, so no further action has been taken on this bill. Further action could be taken, but it may not. And then last on this list is AB 2483. This bill would require a public entity to pay a judgment or settlement for treble damage antitrust rewards against a member of a regulatory board within the department for acts or omissions occurring within their official capacity on that regulatory board. That bill is now dead. It failed a deadline to move out of policy committee in the second house. Before I move on to the last item, are there any questions about those bills? All right, I'll move on to the last item I have. Follow up on information from previous meetings. First up is AB 2113. At the June 2018 committee meeting, there were questions asked, two specific questions, one about the intent of this bill, and two, why this bill differentiates between representatives of the person and of the estate. On the first point, the author's office has stated this bill would clarify the continuing authority and obligation of a guardian of the estate under other provisions of the probate code to pay last expenses, maintain custody and control, and to preserve the assets prior to the delivery of the personal representative, prior to delivery to the personal representative or as ordered by a court. According to the author's office, this bill will help to dispel confusion on the part of financial institutions regarding a guardian's authority over estate finances after the death of the ward until a personal representative is appointed. So, although I'm not an expert on this field, the stated purpose of the bill is to address, potential confusion from financial institutions regarding who has the authority to engage in certain actions at the point in time after the death of a ward, but prior to the appointment of some other representative. On the second point, there is a differentiation between representative of a person and of the estate because those two relationships are defined in separate statutes. A guardian of the person assists in making legal decisions on behalf of a minor. A guardian of the estate is limited to assisting in the financial dealings of a minor ward. It's probable this bill explicitly differentiates between the two in order to coherently describe the different exceptions to the conditions of termination. That's just a more wordy way of saying those two roles are defined in two separate statutes, so reference to those roles is explicitly made in the statute being amended by this bill. And then finally, there's AB 2750. At the June 2018 meeting, there was a question asked about whether this bill would extend authority to obtain certified records to records of a predeceased spouse. The answer to that question is yes. Health and Safety Code Section 7100A2 indicates a competent surviving spouse has the right to control the disposition of remains. This bill amends Health and Safety Code Section 103526 C3A, stating, and under that amendment, a competent surviving spouse would also be an authorized person for purposes of requesting certified copies of death records. So, although it's not directly related to licensees of this bureau, the exception under subdivision C3A makes a reference to authorized persons, and on that list of authorized persons is the spouse of a predeceased individual. Are there any follow-up questions to those questions? All right.
Any comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I have brother Jerry's here.
Okay. I might yell into this. Okay, this is Jerry Desmond with the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. Does that work, Eileen?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
It's a little awkward, but we'll go that way. I just thought I would come in briefly to speak about two of the pieces of legislation that the department reported on, so that the advisory committee knows where PFAC is coming from. And we have appeared at previous advisory committee meetings to discuss our position. The first is AB 3144. PFAC is in support of the legislation, especially the provision that would extend the life of the Bureau for 4 more years. And so we support fundamentally that provision. We also support the provisions that would establish back into the Act the experience opportunity to obtain a license. We know it was in the original Act in a limited fashion, and reestablishing it in a proactive fashion we believe is beneficial to increasing licensure and opportunities and is a good pathway forward. We also support the provision that would extend the application of the Act to personal representatives of decedents' estates. When we review that provision, perhaps it was an oversight originally, but it's a good consumer protection angle for the scope of the Bureau in consumer protection, and we support that as well. There is also a provision in the bill that would clarify the annual report and information in the annual reports to the Bureau, and we support that as well as a good information to the Bureau in the annual reports. And then there's a provision that was discussed that would establish in the Act a clear prohibition against billing a client for responding to complaints filed with the Bureau. That is one we're not quite comfortable with. We're not opposing it in the measure at this time as it moves forward, and we look forward to working with the author, Assemblymember Lowe, as the bill, if it is enacted as we anticipate, as it is implemented, to see if our fears come forth as it's implemented, and if so, we would address those at this time. The second bill is the AB 1247 by Assemblymember Nazarian, and the position of PFAC on the measure is in support. The association has a strong policy of diversity and inclusion that it is implementing in its own strategic plan and its own view of itself and its own members, and sees this as in furtherance of that objective and the best interests of those who we are as licensed professional fiduciaries and those that we serve. We also recognize that this would be the first, as far as we know, this would be the first licensure act within the Department of Consumer Affairs that would have a requirement of this nature in the initial licensure education. And I believe PFAC is proud of that and looks forward to being on the first wave of this kind of measure being added in for original continuing education, as well as recently amended to add for 1 hour of CE on this subject every 5 years or whatever works out that way. So we're fine with the concept of originally and also in continuing to have this. We note that those of you who are licensed fiduciaries or have attended the conference, we have courses on this already, or at least one course, and we see that there will be additional courses once it's added into the Act. So thank you.
Kathleen Thompson, may I ask a question or clarification? Did I hear you say that you're not in opposition to the prohibition of billing clients for responding to complaints against?
Correct. PFAC originally had written formally in opposition to that one provision, not to the bill or anything else in the bill. We are no longer in an opposition position to that provision with these understandings that we have going forward.
Great.
So yes, so there, and I also should mention that there have been a number of discussions, we know with the department as well, on the provisions of AB 3144, and we appreciate that dialogue and interplay as we all try to advance the act, provide for the continuation of consumer protections, and make sure there's entry into the workforce in our act too.
All right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Okay, item number 10. Rebecca, please present the status of proposed rulemakings.
Thank you. So the first two proposed rulemakings, we've already hashed those out in previous meetings regarding inactive and retired licensee. The first one, inactive retired license regulation, and the second one deals with client notification. Those two regulations are in the pre-review process with the department, so we're continually asking the department for updates, and we'll keep you updated as they move through the process. We have two new regulations or proposed regulations to share draft language with you today. The first one deals with advertising, and I hope you've had just a moment to review the draft language included in the packet, and I'll let Fred lead the discussion on this one and the next one, which deals with citations. Thank you.
Okay, so for the proposed regulation for the advertisement, in essence, it's just going to add a definition of what advertising includes, and then also the requirement as to what needs to be listed on the advertisement, and namely the licensee's license number. And that's in section 4485 of the proposed regulation. It's pretty straightforward.
For those of you that are reviewing it right now, this is Angie. The only added sections are the ones that are underlined. So anything that's not underlined or crossed out is as the law already is.
And just for just to clarify, the added section, there's a subsection F that's being added to 4406, and then 4485, that section as a whole is being added. Is everyone done reviewing it? Are there any questions?
Okay.
Okay. So we'll just move on to the second one, the second regulation, which deals with the citation. And for this section, for these amendments, namely, was then to clarify the process as far as the informal conference is concerned. So if you take a look at section 4606, changes were made to clarify when a informal conference has to be requested by, and if someone desires to have a formal hearing, what's a timeline in terms of asking for one if after an informal conference already been done. Or any questions?
Any comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Fred. Item number 11. Rebecca, please describe what will be expected of the apprenticeships of subcommittee members, and then we will ask for the nominations.
So today, I would like to vote for the formation of an apprenticeship subcommittee. I would like for the subcommittee to determine the feasibility of establishing an apprenticeship program to increase pathways to the profession. The subcommittee may consider guidelines for a potential program that would include criteria for both licensees and apprentices, a tracking system to monitor the program, and outreach ideas to reach potential participants. I'd also like for the subcommittee to identify potential roadblocks to establishing such a program. I would like for the committee to be comprised of only 2 members. Do we have a motion to form an apprenticeship subcommittee composed of 2 members?
So, Angela, would you please begin the voting process? So we need a motion?
A motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. So do we have a motion to approve
form.
the apprenticeship subcommittee, opposed to, oh, I'm sorry, let me read back. So is there a motion to form an apprenticeship subcommittee composed of 2 members?
This is Donna Kell. I approve the motion.
Can we hear a second to the motion?
This is Aileen Federico, I second.
Thank you. Okay, Angela, will you please begin the voting process?
Wait, this is Barbara DeVries. Can you quickly tell me what apprenticeship means?
Rebecca?
I think of it as mentorship. I think that there's a lot of brain power to be harnessed from our current licensees, and if we can figure out how to harness that brain power towards bringing people into the profession, I know it's not the easiest profession to break into because it's pretty complicated and it's diverse. So as a layperson, I would like to see how the professionals, what they would suggest for bringing people into the fold.
Let me ask Rebecca. So you mean bringing people? So who are the people?
New licensees.
New licensee. Thank you. Okay.
So I've been told by our legal counsel that we need to ask for public comment prior to a vote.
Thank you.
And if I might just add, I think that with the new pathway of experience only to licensure, it'll be helpful to have licensees who are willing to do the apprenticeship because they can offer that experience pathway.
Okay. So, any other comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Okay, Angela?
Okay, a yes vote will be for the formation of an apprenticeship subcommittee composed of 2 members. Heng Lee To,
Yes.
Eileen Federizo,
Yes.
Jenny Chacon is absent, King G,
Yes.
Donna Kell,
Yes.
Kathleen Thompson,
Yes.
and Barbara DeVries.
Yes.
With a vote of 6 members, it will pass to form this subcommittee.
Thank you, Angela. So given that we are nearing the end of terms for our advisory committee members, and there may be some changes to the makeup of the committee, I will nominate members to the subcommittee early next year. Thank you.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Barbara, can, even if our term expires, can we in advance give you some, information that we have, things that we need?
I would love it.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
This is Rebecca. Thank you. Yes.
Any other comment from the committee members? Any public comment? Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Angela. So now we are at item number 12. Angela, what item have you recorded from our meeting today for as a future agenda items?
So I have not recorded any items that were requested, and we'll have our usual ongoing items that we put in there. Is there anything that anybody has thought of or that I may not have heard during the meeting?
Okay. Are there any other items the committee member would like to add? Is there any public comment? Thank you. So item number 13, the following day is scheduled for the remainder of the calendar year of 2018. If you discover that if this meeting you do have a conflict, please contact Angela Quadra. It's going to be on Wednesday, November 7, 2018. Item number 14, is there any public comment on the item not listed on the agenda? No. So the meeting is adjourned at 26 a.m. Thank you.